our company's first venture into trade shows and that sort of thing, and we were overwhelmed with the response. We started looking into Vortex technology about 6 years ago, and when a little group of us formed just to investigate alternative energies and just alternative topics in general. But we got tired of just talking about it, so we decided to get out the soldering irons and the saws and machines and start playing with some of the concepts and making some devices. And when we started playing with the vortex phenomena, well, we thought we had done something wrong, or we had contaminated the samples or something, because we just could not believe the results. We made a vortex separator, a vortex water treatment thing, a la Victor Schauberger, and I'll explain who he is in just a little while. And we sent off the results, and when we got the results back, we thought the lab had made a mistake, because the results were so counterintuitive. They told us that the water we had sent them was denser than normal water, but is also less viscous. Okay? So we lowered its viscosity, but made it thicker or heavier. Okay? And that just didn't seem right. You know, that you increase the density but lower the viscosity. We thought the lab had made a mistake. So we made up another batch, sent up another sample to another lab, and got the results back, and they told us that we had increased the density and lowered the viscosity. Well, that's because we're curious sorts. It took us 1.5 years to figure out the physics of exactly how we managed to accomplish that. Okay. Then we started really looking into the nature of water and vortex phenomenon and all natural phenomenon. And we spent the next few years studying very odd subjects like sacred geometry, you know, quantum physics, fluid dynamics, and a few other things. And we came to the conclusion that there's two things our scientists don't know a whole lot about. That's vortexes in general and water in particular. And if you want to know the beauty and complexity of the Creator's wonderful creations, all you have to do is study water for a little while. It's probably the most mysterious substance on Earth. Okay? And the vortex, when you combine these two, they go hand in hand, because when you see a whirlpool, it's mostly in water, and you see a tornado, it's accompanied by water. And just the whole concept, and we know vortexes from those two natural phenomena. But if you think about it, the galaxy is a vortex. Okay? And all of the galaxies are vortexes, including our solar system is a vortex. Okay? So the phenomenon of a vortex is universal, and the macroscopic and the microscopic. Okay? Recently, the current interest or wave of interest in vortex phenomena and vortex technology has come from the result of publication of a couple of books. Okay? And those two books are, excuse me, right here. Those two books principally are about Victor Schauberger. Or one of the books is about Victor Schauberger, called Living Water, and how he studied nature, found out how nature moves and how nature cleans water and does the entire water cycle from rain to ocean back up to rain. You know, and he discovered that the movement, the natural movement of water, has particular rhythms and patterns, and then he tried to mimic those, and he discovered that all our science and technology has sort of got it backwards. Okay, he came up with a concept of implosion energy, or energy that comes together instead of blows apart. So he contrasted implosion energy with explosion energy, like the internal combustion engine is an explosive energy system that tends to degrade and goes to entropy. Okay. He figured out nature works with the opposite energy, the implosion forces. Okay? And those are best demonstrated in a vortex, as things come together and create new things. Okay? So if you want to get Living Water by it's Victor Schauberger and the Secrets of Natural Energy by Olaf Anderson, it's a very good introduction to the alternative thinking of Victor Schauberger. Okay? Then there's another book called The Vortex, The Key to Future Science by David Ash. Well, this is a very scientific book, so don't expect it to be a light read. But basically shows where we went wrong in our physics and everything. And he shows that the vortex is the phenomena that creates reality. Okay? Some physicists have now today gone to describing an electron as the event horizon of a toroidal vortex. Okay? That the electron is, what we call an electron is nothing but the outer event horizon of a small vortex of ether, okay, or zero space, or the void, whatever you want to call it, because they're debating. The scientists don't want to call it the ether. You know, they'll call it anything else but. Right? They'll call it zero space or the vacuum energy, okay, but they won't call it the ether. Okay, but nowadays the quantum physicists are going, well, it's something. You know, and now they're now getting more comfortable calling it the ether. Then you discover that there's a concept of when you rotate things, it actually couples with the zero space or the background of space or the fabric of space, whatever you want to call it. For simplicity's sake, we'll just call it what the ancients call it, the ether. Okay? So there seems to be a coupling. So that a lot of these free energy systems involve rotational systems, okay? And the rotational systems are said to, whenever you rotate any mass or any field, it tends to drag the local space frame or the zero point energy, or again, the ether, and can actually bring into our dimensions, our space, new energies, okay, that are coupled from the ether. Yes, your question. That's a good way to put it. You got a resonance between macrocosm and microcosm, and the revolving space as a means to make the transition, you know, the transducer between the two. Okay. So if you get the book on the Vortex, The Key to Future Science, that's a great thing to spark a lot of imagination and a lot of good thinking. Okay? Okay. The concept of the vortex is very ancient. There was a book published in 1881 called the OSPI. Okay? And it's one of those strange books that was done by automatic writing, and it's supposed to be God talking to man and things. But it says a vortex is a rotating field of mighty power. Because a vortex is not really a thing, it's a phenomenon. It's what we use to describe a particular motion in a fluid, okay, or a field, okay? But the vortex itself doesn't exist in and of itself. It's an effect in a field, okay? But the force that creates this thing is, especially in the ether, is given the name in this book called Vortexia, is the name of the energy force of the vortex. And it's interesting that in this book, written in 1881, they're describing the cosmos being created by the forces of these little vortexes coming together to create matter. Okay? So it's interesting that quantum physicists are now getting around to describing things the same way they were described in 1881 in a philosophy book. Okay? Well, if you go look at the Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical tradition, they describe creation coming out of a vortex. Okay? It's a very important principle, right? And that is what a vortex look if you're looking through a clear plastic tube and through the water, and you can begin to see what's happening. It's a very familiar phenomenon. Every time you pull the stopper on your bathtub, you see a little whirlpool form. You're looking at a vortex. But the dynamics that are happening in here have troubled mathematicians for years and years and years. And still today, every 5 years, mathematicians from all over the world get together in Paris, France, to describe the vortex, because there's still not a decent mathematical model of the vortex, right? And when you start looking at the dynamic forces that are going on in the vortex, well, you better have your science down good, because it combines almost everything we know about motion and energy interactions. It involves the Coanda effect, the Bernoulli principle, Brownian movement. You know, everything we know from almost every field combines. So you have to be a master of all those things to begin to grasp all of the phenomena that's going on in the vortex. Right? Then you have the nasty side of this thing that really upsets all the scientists, because you have to understand music, harmony, ratios, relationships. Right? If you want to humble an engineer and make him realize what he doesn't know, have him investigate a vortex for a week. Okay? I cannot begin to explain that when you think, you know, you've gone to school for 12 years, you know, you got all those initials after your name, and you sit down and you look at something and you start explaining it, and you go, well, if that's so, then this is true, and you try that experiment, it doesn't work, you go, oh, something else is going on. And after you've done about 50 of these things, you sort of finally have to admit, you know what? Nobody knows what's going on here. Nobody's theories describe what's really happening. Okay? Then you go look at the literature, and you find out that for the past 30 years, the only research done on vortex was how to eliminate them. Okay? And so, well, we did an experiment. We installed one of our first commercial units in a trial in a big 20,000 gallon pond in Houston, and the third day the thing stopped working. Uh-oh. So we took it apart and tried to figure out what was wrong. We found a little coupling that reduced it from 3/4 of an inch down to 1/4 of an inch. It was made out of a black plastic called Naglene, right? And we took that thing off and looked at it, and we found out that it was shut. But it wasn't stopped up with foreign particles. The Naglene, the force of the vortex had actually made the Naglene flow shut. It swirled shut. So that Naglene plastic is not a solid, it's just a real dense liquid. Okay? And the force of the vortex, the dynamic forces in the vortex, made that thing flow shut. Well, we didn't have a lot of time to figure out the science and figure out what went wrong, so we just replaced it with a stronger material and put a brass reducer in it and kept on going. Okay? We managed to clear up that pond, clear the pond of all dissolved solids, and took it from a total dissolved solids count of like 500 parts per million down to 12 parts per million within 24 hours. Okay? Once we had everything flowing right. And it was a success, but it was frightening to see that this very small pump, a small vortex unit, had actually exerted enough force on this plastic to make it flow and swirl shut. And when you start calculating the force involved to do that, it's pretty impressive, very impressive. And the force of a vortex is very, very hard to gauge or hard to estimate just looking at it. And but when you actually start seeing it do work, you know that the force of the water itself moving, you calculate the horsepower it's moving at and everything, and you look at it and you get the multiplying factor of the implosion force, okay? And it's a very impressive thing, and I welcome anybody to work out the numbers. You can make a vortex at home real simply. You can check in your little science catalog and everything. They sell, or toy store, and they sell these little vortex generators that have a little plastic cylinder that you screw in 2 1-liter bottles into on either end. And you fill one bottle with water, then you tip it over and swirl it again, and it creates a vortex, and it goes into the other bottle. Then you turn it around, flip it over, and you get a vortex the other way. So you can explore the vortex phenomenon for a total cost of, what, 98 cents plus 2 1-liter plastic bottles. Right? We started looking at this phenomenon and started learning about it, and we started thinking what practical application was going on. Then we found out that other people had done some research in using vortexes. We found about a Rank-Hilsch tube. Okay? Guy's name Rank-Hilsch invented this little thing. Actually, the first one was made out of cardboard, and it's basically a cylinder which they have a tube going into, and on each end of this small cylinder they have 2 smaller tubes going out, right in line with the main cylinder. And the strange phenomena, one of the tubes is short and one of them is long, and then there's a little cylinder involved. You blow into it, or blow compressed air into the inlet of this thing, and the compressed air is normally at 70 degrees, at anywhere from 40 to 90 psi, and it goes around this tube, and out one end comes out 240 degree temperature air, and out of the other end is minus 50. Okay? Now this is nothing but a hollow tube. Okay? It's a wide 1-inch diameter center, hollow tube with covers on it, and then a 1/4-inch tubes on either end of that. They're both open at each end. The long tube has got a small obstruction so that it limits the amount of air coming out. Blows it through. You got 240 degree air coming on one end and 50 degree air coming out of there. There's probably 27 companies in the United States making Rank-Hilsch tubes for machinists to cool their machines down with. Yes. Hilsch. Thank you. Hilsch. Okay. My pronunciations are just by sight, so thank you for correcting me. The Hilsch, those tubes, and there's a Russian guy who's invented a way of ganging those things up. But back when they were invented, there was very little commercial application for those tubes because they were invented before plastics were. Now that machinists are machining plastics and they want to machine it faster, they now have an application. They blow compressed air through their thing and keep the plastic cool so they can machine it faster. And now there's a big market in vortex technology of the air. And you can check any good tool distributor company and get yourself a vortex air cooler. Right? Now it's not a very efficient way of cooling because it takes a lot of compressed air, but if you need something real cold, real fast in a very small spot, it works really, really well. A lot of mechanics are being sold very poorly made ones to check the action of your automatic choke. Okay? Instead of letting the car heat up until the choke works, all they do is put compressed air and put the 240 degree air on the coil of the automatic choke, right? And they see if it opens, and then they flip it over the other end and cool it down, see if it closes. Right? So that's another application of vortex technology that some people can be familiar with, and you can go out and buy one today. Right? We made a few of those things, and we decided to make a large tube, copied it, blew water in there at 1,500 psi. It had one heck of a splash because none of the unions held, and we wet everything down. we went back to the drawing board and made everything better again. And we started producing the water there, and we got a very minor temperature change, okay? But when we started putting stuff into the water to see how it moved, the little plastic pellets that we put into the water came out the other end as a string, okay? The little plastic pellets were dumping in, and we were hoping to see them swirl. They did swirl, they went right down to the center, but they came out as a solid string, you know, like the little string you find in a can, and it just ejected out of the other end, okay? It had squeezed these little pellets together, all right? And we go, oh, that's interesting. How useful is that? But at that point in time, we weren't fully thinking. We just, oh, that's a neat effect. So we bought a whole bunch of plastic, and we, you know, every time we had people over, we'd hook up the hose to it and turn on the pump and make silly string, you know. That was a good thing. And then we realized that, gee, you know, this is a good way to mix polymers, right? So we made a very expensive stainless steel model, since it's coming out of our own pockets, you know, machine time and all this other stuff. We made a very small model and got some polymers, and we found out that with some polymers, we destroy them. We chop them up beyond recognition. And with other polymers, they mix fine, and we make these long strings, or super polymers, okay? They have some very strange effects, all right? So we have a friend who's actually trying to find a market for that. And like, okay, what good is it, you know? but it's an interesting effect. It's available, right? We did find out that the reason we're chasing that market potential down is because we found out if you want to go into the business of mixing polymers, DuPont sells you a machine for $4 million to do that. You know, if you could find a cheaper way, I'm sure there'd be a market for it. So we're investigating that aspect too. Yes? Well, we're investigating all that stuff. I'll talk to you a little later about that opportunity too. See if we can't do something with that. One of the things that has been personally interesting for me is I've always worried about the quality of water coming into my house. I've always had filters and all sorts of things. And I wanted to, we came across the research of Victor Schauberger in water, and he had a machine in his patents that was trying to make spring water, okay? And we got interested in duplicating some of that research, but at the same time we were getting the benefit of the research of all the researchers since Schauberger. And a few of those are like Hans Grandier, who continued the work of Victor Schauberger in Austria, who sells a Vortex water product today. Marcel Vogel, who did a lot of research with vortexing water and crystals, and how to program water and how to restructure water. We found out that water isn't just water. You know, it's not just H2O. There's, at any one given time, there's probably 15 different forms of water molecules floating around in a glass of water, all right? Plus all the hydroxyl ions and all this stuff, and that water just sitting in my glass exists as liquid water, as ice crystals, and in steam bubbles, all within that glass just sitting there. So there's a very incredibly dynamic system going on there. So water is a very strange thing by itself, and when you create a vortex in it, it gets even stranger, because it starts changing shape. And the bond angles between the hydrogen molecules and the oxygen molecules change as it takes on energy. We don't know exactly how, but everybody's telling us that it's because of the rotational coupling that since water does not compress, it has to change its state. And it basically changes its angles so it can pack tighter together, right? And that's how we're making water denser. But in that packing it tighter together, it actually gains energy. It has more energy. So it has more self-repulsion force, more negative charge on it. So it actually flows better. All right? So it only took us a year and a half to figure that little detail out, okay, and work out the physics of it. Okay? But we still wanted to know, okay, we changed the bond angle and all this stuff, but is that make better water for you? Well, all that by itself doesn't make it better water for you. We found that water retains information, biological information, and the method of doing that is dual. It retains biological information by resonance, or the oscillation that's in the water molecule itself, okay? And water molecules are very gregarious. They like to get together in groups, okay? And over time, the groups get larger and larger and larger. They normally start off with, in small little clumps of about 20 water molecules. And they either take on the form of an icosahedron, like this, or a dodecahedron, where the dodecahedron has flats where this has points, and points where this has flats, okay? And as time goes on, and if there's any contaminants in water, or anything mixed in, whether you consider it contaminant or not, water tends to surround that molecule and creates a cage around it in the shape of that molecule, right? And it starts resonating with that shape, all right? The problem is that you can filter the water, take away that particle that originally caused that shape, but the water molecules stay together and fly together in that water in that same shape, that as if the material was there. Well, that sparked a tremendous controversy recently when Dr. Benveniste was the first to actually document this capacity of water to remember and carry information. Okay? Well, he was drummed out of the Academy of Sciences quite recently, and has been, living on his own income for quite some time. And 3 months ago, a group of 9 doctors got together and did a triple-blind study with the sole aim of discrediting Benveniste's theories. Okay? Turns out, after the results were in, that Benveniste was onto something, and now they have to completely reconsider themselves, because this study was paid for partially by the AMA, and they wanted to totally discredit the only scientific basis for homeopathy ever found. Okay? And they blew it because they corroborated his findings. And it's this structure of the, ain't that nice? Yeah. The Dr. Benveniste, you can be found on the website at digibio.com. Send him a letter, congratulate him, did a good job. He's fought this battle all by himself, right? But this function of memory of water is the basis for homeopathy. I don't know if you know how to make a homeopathic dilution. You take something, you put it in water, you shake the heck out of it, hopefully in a nice swirl pattern, okay? And better yet, make a few vortexes a few times in each direction, right? Then you take 1 drop of that in like 20 gallons of fresh water and drop it in and then agitate it, okay? That's because the little molecules, okay, will make a whole bunch of these little clusters, okay? And once those clusters are stabilized, you can take that's now been energized by the mechanical energy you've added to the system by the agitation. You drop it into the 10 gallons of water, right? You swirl it around a little bit, let it set for a little while, and the little molecules will teach all the stray water molecules, hey, get together this way. It creates a pattern, a resonant pattern in that rest of the water and the other water molecules start organizing themselves that way, okay? Because they sort of like to play Simon Says, you know? They're very gregarious molecules. They like to play, and, you know, somebody describes what's the dance of the day, and they dance that dance until some more energetic signal comes along, you know, to reorganize the water molecules, right? And then you take that little water and you give it to somebody, and their cells react to the little envelopes as if they actually contained the substance that the shape dictates was there. So you can now see a real scientific basis in physics and in chemistry and information sciences, okay, and information theory, to understand the scientific basis and reality of homeopathy. That's interesting. But that also gives you, sort of should cause an alarm, because if water retains a memory, gee, where's the water that I'm drinking coming out of my faucet? Where'd that come from? Where's it been? What kind of bad habits has it picked up? You know? And how can I get rid of that? All right? So all of a sudden you're going, hey, gee, this is a whole new problem. You know, gee, I had enough problems to begin with. Now I got to worry where the heck my water's been, you know? So that was another thing we started worrying about. Then we discovered a man named Norman Wooten, a scientist, engineer from Waco, Texas. At that time he was in Dallas. And we found out he'd been researching water for about 20 years. So we went, made a caravan and paid a visit to him, and he taught us about how to wipe the memory off of water and make it fresh and virginal again. All right? Only his method was a little difficult. He wanted us to, you know, use an electrolyzer, blow it up to hydrogen and oxygen, and then recombine it in a very controlled environment, okay? Which is, first of all, expensive. Second of all, it's very dangerous. When you recombine hydrogen and oxygen to make water, you better make sure you're doing it in a very sturdy vessel, okay? And if you have a hydrogen leak, pray, because if it burns, you can't see it, you know? And if you got a leak and it catches fire and you run your arm against it, you're a crispy critter, and you don't even know how it happened because you cannot see a hydrogen flame, right? So this is not something you want to play in your garage when your son's bedroom is right above. No good. So that it was a difficult thing to do, and an idea. Then we said, well, listen, is there another way to erase the memory of water? And he said, oh, yeah, you can. You can create this kind of spin, but you have to do it under these parameters. And he goes, well, have you done that before? Yeah, once we got this thing up there. So we crawled out in his 40 acres of land, and out in one of the sheds back there, he had this old experiment he had made. He says, oh, y'all go take it. It never worked properly for me, but I think, you know, if we did this and this, it would work. So we brought it back and we started playing with it. We created some other devices, and we created some interesting water, and we were separating the particles in it, and we sort of noticed that and we said, you know, if we could put this here and this here, we could get these particles to go this way and those particles to go that way. So we spent a few more bucks, machined a few more parts, you know, and tried it, and it worked. All right? Then we said, okay, time to test these labs, make sure that we're actually doing something to the water besides just getting dirt out. Okay? So we sent it to the lab, and they told us that we had denser water, less viscous water, lowered surface tension, okay, less particles in it. Well, no surprise now, we knew about that. Okay, but they also told us about the zeta potential and the oxidation reduction potential, and we go, oh my God, what's that? You know. So we had to go back and study a little bit more. We had improved all of those, okay? And we go, all right, but what in this model changed it over the previous ones, you know? So we had to spend another year figuring that one out, right? Then we made, as we were studying, we remembered that there's a science called topology, okay? And we decided to take a 3D vortex and do a topological transform onto the 2D surface, all right, and then give it some relief, all right, and run water through it, see what happened. Well, it worked. Just did exactly the same thing that a vortex does to it. Energized the water, did it. And then so we poured some of this stuff, and we playing with it, and we poured it into a little fountain that had been working out in a garden. And we came back a few minutes, and we noticed that all the mosquitoes in that tub were dead. And we're going, uh-oh, we're killing stuff with our water. Stop. Whoa, wait. I've been drinking this stuff, you know. Alarms went off. I mean, we're killing stuff with water. So it only took us a little over a year to find out why that was happening. Turns out mosquitoes love stagnant water. Stagnant water has these huge clobs of water molecules stuck together, such that as they can be 600 to 800 layers thick of water molecules, one on top of each other, that are attracted by a hydrostatic bond. But the outer layer has almost no energy left for interaction at all. And mosquitoes are evolved in that environment, right? When you put some of our energized water that's got these small little clusters, it starts grabbing molecules from these big clusters to make smaller clusters, right? And this membrane of the mosquito larva eggs, okay, don't have holes about this big, all right? So since most of the water molecules are that big, no problem. It lives in that environment and is perfectly happy. But you put water, our water, that has molecules this big in it, they go right through the membrane, and since it's a one-way membrane, and there's a couple of these small water molecules in the thing called osmotic pressure tries to balance the distribution of these molecules. So they start invading into the cell membrane until it swells and pops. Okay? Found out it also did that to Legionnaire's disease bacteria in the water. Okay? Then we found out that, hey, our cells have got a real small membrane, and because we evolved in fresh water, okay, or seawater that has all the small clusters, okay, non-stagnant water. So it's okay for us, but it's really bad for the mosquitoes. And they go, you know, well, gee, wait a minute. Okay, so it won't kill good stuff. It just kills those little nuisances. Hey, that's not bad. That's a good thing, you know. And so we brought out the alarm bells and stopped condition red and started playing with the units again and drinking the water again. Because let me tell you, it's strange to find out you pour some water away, you thought you were doing nothing, and you look back there 45 minutes later and there's everything's dead in it, and, you know, it's like, oh, you know, very alarming. Pardon? Actually, if we had our wits about us, we would have noticed that there was a lot of other critters still alive and kicking in the pond, okay? But all we saw is dead. And the alarms went off, okay? We gave a couple of units to an entomologist in Austin, Texas, and he put them on up there, and he's currently doing a year-long ecological impact study of putting very activated water into a large pond, and he did an assay of all the biological life, the froggies and everything. The mosquitoes disappeared in 3 days, and the dragonflies came in, okay? So the mosquitoes were replaced by the dragonflies, which is great, all right? And there was a little problem with an algae bloom. Seems like green living things loved the water, okay? So then the fish, when they put the little hose in the thing, you got a little picture where the water started clearing in a little arc around the end of the hose. There's a little quarter-inch hose going into the pond, and there's an arc of water, right? And all the fish are lined up right at the arc where the clear water and the murky water started. And they're just lined up there. Right? So, yeah, they like the water too, okay? Except that they're smart enough not to go into the clear water, you know. That puts them at risk to all the chicken hawks and stuff up there, you know, the red hawks. So they stay in the cover of the murky water. I thought that was pretty smart, you know. When we made our units that are trying to optimize the health benefits of water, okay, we get rid of the memory, create the small water molecules, and put a decent balance of minerals in the water. While we were doing our research, we found out some nasty secrets, okay? These water conditioning companies don't tell you. 9 countries have done a total of 50 studies. All of them have a positive inverse correlation between drinking water quality and heart attack rates. And the main ingredient that's important is magnesium. The more magnesium you have in drinking water in a community, the less heart attack rates you have in that community. The less magnesium you have, the higher heart attack rates. If you go to a cardiologist and you're a new patient, one of the questions on the sheet we ask you is, do you own a water softener? Right? And the reason is, water softeners, ion exchange water softeners, destroy and get rid of all of the beneficial calcium, all of the beneficial magnesium, all of the beneficial selenium, boron, copper. They get rid of it all and trade it for a whole bunch of sodium. Okay? And that slimy fuel you can never wash, you know, just, oh well, that's personal. But they don't tell you about that. Then they say, well, you want good, fresh tasting water, get an ozone unit. Well, you better be taking your mineral supplements if you got an ozone unit too. Okay? Now, if you've got bad contaminated, biologically contaminated water, for Christ's sakes, get an ozone unit. You know, that's better than amoebic dysentery, you know. And mineral supplements, okay, you can get those too, okay. But, gee, don't you think they should tell you that they put you at risk of heart attack if you rely on that as your only drinking source? You know, sort of truth in advertising type thing, you know. I thought it was a little cheesy that they just forget to mention that, okay. We have built, our little group of researchers had built a lot of other devices, and whenever we built a medical device like Bob Beck's bioelectrifier or Hulda Clark's little zapper, we test it on ourselves and abuse it to test the limits of safety, okay? Because we just, you know, we're not going to recommend something if it's going to hurt you, okay? Or at least we're going to caution you where the limits are, okay? So we decided, well, okay, we're talking about all this stuff, well, we better, you know, walk the walk. So we built units for most of the folks in the group. There was about 6 of us. We built units and installed them on the homes, you know. And I had a very unfortunate phenomenon about the 3rd week after I put the unit on. All of the calcium in my pipes and in my sewer lines decided to come loose at the same time, okay? And I'm sitting there cleaning up from dinner one day, and all of a sudden my sink won't drain. I'm like, oh boy, you know. So I get out the pump and the snake and everything, and I'm going after it, and nothing happens. I get the Drano and I put in there, and nothing happens. So I go outside, open the inspection port, go grab the pressure thing, and blow the thing clear, right? And then as my son's holding the hose onto the thing and blowing the pressure through, I'm out looking at the inspection port to see what was it that caused the clog. And I see these little half-moon shapes of white stuff, okay? Like, white orange peel, okay? I'm going, what is that? So I decided I ran over, grabbed a little brush and snagged a few of these things, and it was all the calcium that built up on all my sewer lines had broken loose, and these little odd shapes had come to the 90-degree bend in the sewer line and stopped it up. Okay? Well, nothing but Vortex water. The Vortex water is so hungry for information, so gregarious, that it actually sucks the calcium right off the pipe. Okay, it redissolves it. We found also that it's really good idea about this experience. Then I decided, well, if it's all out of the calcium and out of the sewer pipes, what's happening to my shower head, my faucets? So I went around to all my faucets, took off the aerators, and dumped all the garbage that is shaken loose, you know, cleaned up the aerators, went out to my shower head, took it apart, and dumped like a teaspoon of all this garbage that had shaken loose from the pipes, right? They work much better now, right? Then it dawned on me, oh my God, my hot water heater. So I went out there, tried to open my hot water heater to drain it. Nothing came out. And swing. Okay, get the little wire, stick it in there, couldn't get in there. Took off the valve. Nothing came out. And I saw that white plug there going, uh-oh, do I really want to do this? You know? So after I laid out all the plastic sheets and all this stuff, I got the little screwdriver and I stuck it in and poof, hot water comes out and it looks like dirty milk. You know? All right, cleaned it out, had my fun, you know. And it shook a whole bunch of stuff loose. A few months later I had to go do it again. And I got about half a gallon of sediment out of it 3 months later. Okay, so the water, vortex water, is cleaning out your pipes, right? Yes, sir. No, it will not leach the calcium out of the bones. It actually carries calcium in it. Okay. If we would to totally deplete the calcium and totally take the minerals out, I'd be concerned about it myself. We deliberately do not take all the minerals out of the water because we know they're beneficial for us. Okay, so we design it so that it leaves in a good degree of calcium and magnesium. Okay, and it doesn't take any of the magnesium out because it's very well dissolved, thank God. And it's much smaller than 2 microns, right? So all that stuff stays in there. But what it will do is transport waste material out of your body, out of your cells a lot better, okay? So it makes it bioavailable. We installed these units and we had a couple of complaints from people that in our group, they stopped showering at night because they took a shower, they couldn't go to sleep. They were just energized. They wanted to stay awake. So he said, well, that's really odd. So we remembered our little topological experiment, and we made a little shower head, a little tiny shower head thing that did vortexing of the water, gave it to a couple of people, and said, try this out. And we didn't say anything, right? And they said, you know, I took a shower. I couldn't sleep all night. I was so charged up. And we go, oh, yeah? Yeah. A few months later, they go, hey, you want this thing back? He says, why? Well, I got to take a shower after I come home from work. But if I take a shower after I come home from work, I can't go to sleep. Yeah. Okay. However, most people do say that, well, one lady the day after we installed it said, that's the best shower I've ever had. Okay? So they shower immediately from coming home from work and not later on in the evening because they've learned. And I don't understand that phenomenon. It's a purely subjective and anecdotal thing. But a lot of people have reported that if they take a shower at night, they stay energized for long and have trouble falling asleep. Right? I haven't had the time or the money to investigate that phenomenon, and I wish I could tell you more about it, but it's still a mystery to me. And it's good anecdotal information. One of the other things that we had learned about our using vortex technology to treat water is that the water retains enough new energy so that even after you've used it and you've thrown it away, it entrains the water or the ground, okay? Or if you put it back into the well, it will actually entrain all the water down in the aquifer and actually change the water quality coming from that well, right? Now this is the reports we had. So we finally built a few well units. We installed one up in Helotes, Texas, and up in Bandera and a few other places. The water came out really nice. Of course, the wells we chose were not really bad water. They were pretty actually excellent water, and they were much better water. And when we installed it in the well, I got a call back about 3 days later, and they were real upset at me. And they said, Alex, you really ruined our coffee. And I go, what? What happened? Well, we have to use about, 2/3 of the coffee we normally use because, the day after you install it, we made coffee the normal way, and we were wired for the rest of the day. I said, well, it dissolves better. Well, yeah, but come on, So they changed the recipe for their coffee. They used 2/3 of the amount of coffee to make their normal coffee, and they were perfectly happy. Right? They had to get together at their place out there, and they made iced tea for everybody. And 15 people asked them for the recipe. It's weird. And all they said, just the water. And they go, how can we get one? And we go, uh-oh, people want one of these things? We're doing this research for our own, things. And people started saying, hey, there might be a business in this. So because of these people wanting these things, aside from the researchers who were doing it, we thought, gee, what would it take? So we started developing the business. Well, let me tell you, folks, taking an idea and a concept and taking it from the garage and putting it in a nice box and being able to offer it at Sears, well, that's a long, long road, okay? There's a German saying, the devil's in the details, and I'm here to tell you, he's there, right? It is not as easy as think. People say, I have a lot of inventors that have these wonderful inventions, okay? And then somebody asks them the strange question, how are you going to sell it? And they go, I don't know. After 25 years of development for the product, they have no clue how they're going to sell it, market it, package it, deliver it, install it, service it, okay? And now they got that hill to climb. After 25 years of developing, perfecting the technology, they realize that they're now at the foothills and the mountains in front of them, okay? And a lot of people go, the heck with it, and walk away. Says, oh, you want it? Well, yeah, it's right there, you develop it. Because after spending 25 years or 6 years of your life, or 6 years and your fortune, and then you come up to that mountain, you go, that's a little discouraging, folks. And you don't have to attribute it to any secret government, politics, businessmen, at all. The mere fact that the mere reality of the marketplace is enough to scare an inventor to death, right? We decided that one of the best uses for this thing would be to help little fishies, build units for aquariums, right? It's a real complex environment, requires maintaining of balances and nitrogen and oxygen and all these things, So this little units could do it. So we spent a lot of money, made a prototype, and actually made a little model prototype, all designed and everything, and pretty plastic and everything. And we decided we better test this out. So we went to a guy to see if we could borrow his aquarium, okay, to test our stuff on his aquarium. And yeah, okay, he wanted us to put up a $5,000 bond in case we killed all these little fishies. And I said, yeah, remember the mosquitoes? Yeah, okay. So he said, well, yeah, okay. And then he said, but you ought to really go talk to Harry. I go, Harry? Yeah. Oh, he's my distributor. He's the guy I buy all my stuff from. So I said, well, couldn't hurt. Let's go talk to Harry. So Harry looked at our little prototype. We explained the technology to him. And he says, great. When can you have me some units? He said, 90 days. He said, good. I want 150,000 of them in 90 days, please. And we're going, what? Like, we're expecting like 5, 10, He was ready to cut us a check for 150,000 units to be delivered in 90 days. The worst thing in the world we could have done is to take in his money. Because there's no possible way we could have got the production floor space, equipment, manpower, molds, and everything together in under 90 days. And we would have had to default on that contract, and we'd be in court for a year, okay? And we'd never want to see another Vortex as long as we lived, okay? So we're sitting there going like, we could be rich if we weren't so stupid, And it's just the market reality works to suppress these inventions. Because can you imagine signing a contract saying you're going to do the impossible for $1.98, or create life for $5.25, that can be a little daunting. Right? So we put off commercialization of our stuff until we could actually afford it. Okay. And I used to work for a large computer company. I used to be an architectural systems specialist, or excuse me, a systems architecture specialist. I used to design computers, okay? Large, big ones, not the little PCs, big ones. I've been preaching the Unix gospel since 1981 for anybody who knows computer stuff. Yeah, all right, one guy, all right. Yeah, the only Unix geek in here. Guru, yeah. You know what the Unix is? Oh, okay, good. All right. Well, that's what I used to do for a living, but I'm a systems analyst by training. So when I think of things, I see the soup to nuts, beginning to end, whole complete cycle things. And when the guy said 150,000 units, I'm sitting like, oh my God. And my brother, I says, well, you know we got a good idea here. Now we just got to figure out what we're doing. You know? So we went back to the drawing board, started doing things, and about 50 different prototypes later that didn't work for various reasons. Either they were too expensive to put together, took too long to put together, were not reliable, or looked really bad, you know. We kept going over it, and the product design phase of taking a thing that worked, a technology that worked, okay, to be able to put it together in such a manner that you can build 100,000 of them a year, package them pretty, and actually let them survive shipping, you know, became a very interesting task, all right? And, well, it ate up all my savings, you know. And then come last December, I get this little thing and package in from my boss, and the package is too thick and marked personal. And I'm like, uh-oh, you know. And I got laid off, you know, just like the poor guys, 6,000 guys from HP just got laid off, you know. Then I'm sitting there going, oh, well, I went into a little nervous breakdown, you know. And then a friend from Arizona called me up and said, hey, gee, now you're free to do whatever you want. And I go, hey, yeah, I am. I said, and they also said that, you know, you've been talking about all this stuff. Well, when are you going to do it? And I go, why not? So I cashed in my 401k and did everything else and got involved in actually doing this thing. And we started manufacturing things. We had all the details worked out. We just hadn't got around the money to doing them. That's okay. We still didn't have the money to do them, but I did have now is time. Right? So now that I didn't have to pay anybody else to do it, I did it myself. I spent 3 months in the machine shop designing all the tooling and all this other good stuff. We built these units and put them out there. These Vortex units are now available. We've installed several of them in wells, and you can take a Vortex unit that has six separator stages in it, and you take out the big chunks, the little smaller chunks, and then the last separator tube takes out particles down to 2 microns. Okay, remember, the benefit of this technology is there's no filters to clog, no chemicals to add. It doesn't add salt to the process. There's no electricity used. Okay, there's no even magnets to mess with. Right? And then the last 2 chambers are to address the issue of memory. We have a little laminar flow nozzle that we put into the thing, so all the molecules tend to line up, okay? And that gets some of the big clumps separated out, and then we blow it into the vortex at a very high velocity, and it creates thousands of little layers of water moving at different speeds. And these clumps span 1 or 2 layers, they get ripped apart. Okay? The dynamic shear destroys all the programming of the water. And then coming from the second to the last tube to the last tube, 90% of the memory of the water has been removed. In the last tube, we add some beneficial memories to it. Okay? We create some organic shapes, okay, and then send it out down to your house. So that's why it's a big round thing. A round thing has got eight tubes in it. There's 153 components in the units, And people says, well, aren't you scared somebody's going to take your ideas and do it? And I go, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll buy them from them. They'll make my life easier. You know, the startup cost is phenomenal. I mean, and if you want to steal the idea and go to business, cool, I will sign an agreement. I'll buy stuff from you. Because if you got the money or the stupidity to do it, go ahead. Yeah, yes, sir. Oh, good question. We priced the units initially at $1,250 for a municipal water supply unit, okay, and at $2,450 for a well unit, okay. The well unit has an input, a processed water output, and an exhaust water output. The exhaust water we put down back into the well, right? And I'm very happy to report that one of our dealers, new dealers who installed one in his house, we asked him to go get some water samples, right? And the unit's been in his well for about 90 days. And when he opened up the faucet that goes directly from the pump before it goes into the unit, he opened it and poured out a gallon and goes, wait a minute, this isn't my water, okay? Because it was clear, it had a little bit of the odor in it, the sulfur odor, but it was clear. And the day we installed the unit, we had him take pictures of water before and after, and this one's brown and this one's clear, right? And the brown one came directly from his pump, right? But now, 90 days later, he's going, wait, this isn't my water. And we're smiling, going, great. Because the wastewater that we're putting away is actually, the waste is being carried by some of the most energetically charged water in the whole system. And we're putting it back down to the well, and by resonance, it's teaching all the other water a new dance, right? And it actually improved the quality of his well, right? We reminded him that we told him that's how it works, and he goes, oh yeah, it's true? And he goes, think we were lying? Yeah. But it's actually a very interesting phenomenon to see for yourself. You know, it's one thing to know things up in your head, but to see them work actually is phenomenal, especially since you worked it out and you think, yeah, that's what it's going to do, and you know it. And 3 years later, you install one, and it actually works that way, and you go, oh, wow, that's cool. Yes, sir. Goes back down the well, sir. Goes back down the well. There's a couple of reasons for that, you know. We don't really want to waste the water, so we'll store the water back down there. The particulate matter is also molecular, also has memory, it also has structure, right? The water has now trained it to aggregate instead of dendritic crystals with little points and hooks into nice regular crystals, okay? And by doing so, it precipitates out of the water in the aquifer, okay? Talking, yeah, basically. It rejoins the rock, yes.
Any effect on growing plants?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We put a unit out at a peanut farmer guys in Castroville, Texas, right? And we told them, look, send some soil samples before you do this. Sell some soil samples to the extension service. So he did. And the guy says, what do you want these things? Well, I'm about to plant. He goes, oh, okay, well, here's, you know, and he mailed the samples in, and he got the mail back. Well, 4 months later, after irrigating with our water, he sent another sample over to the county extension agent, okay? And then he called him up to find out what the results were, and the extension agent's first question was, hey, where did you move? Okay? Turns out that all the inorganically bound minerals in his land, by irrigating with our water, had become dissolved and organically available. Okay? It took a while, okay, but because the water has a greater capacity, it's more gregarious, it's seeking out more information, okay, it went and found the inorganically bound chemicals and started doing a job on it, started dissolving them, right? We have did an experiment early on with the really activated water. We took 2 pieces of felt, or 4 pieces of felt, and made 2 sandwiches, separated by about a 1/4 inch. Put them on top of a little piece of plastic, and draped the felt into 2 different water sources, right? And then inside the felt sandwiches, we put beans, okay, pinto beans, oriented so that the root sprout would go in opposite directions for these 2 beans, right? We're happy to report the beans sprout that was pointed the wrong way made a U-turn and went to our water. Okay? That was interesting. It had gone over and then it made a U-turn and gone to our water. Okay? Yes? We have no filters in our unit, sir. Okay? No, fluoride is a beastie, a bad, nasty thing, and it's very, very tough to remove. All I have to say about fluoride, if it's in your water, it's your own fault. Tell your senators, congressmen, and people, and don't stand for it. Because it's a lot cheaper to do that than to try to filter it, evaporate it, distill it, and coronal discharge it out of your water. A whole house fluoride filter, which is what you're going to need for full protection, probably sells for around $3,000 just for the filter material itself. Installation, you'll probably spend $6,000 getting a filter system in, and you'll have to replace the filters every 3 months. Okay? Or you could buy a $40,000 reverse osmosis system so you can reverse osmosis all over the water in your house, but then you're not going to have to just get mineral supplements, you're going to get bath salts too. Okay? Or you can just camp down at your city hall and say, hey, stop it. Take your pick. Okay? Yes, we'll sell you pre-filters to get the fluoride out. They're not cheap. Okay? It is better and would be a better service to mankind if you talk to your politicians and say, hey, don't do this. Get it out of there. Okay? And educate yourself on why fluoride is probably the most potent toxin to humankind ever envisioned. Okay? There's plenty of literature out there, and you can educate yourself on that. We do have a deluxe model that filters all the chemicals and stuff, all the chlorine and cyclosporidium, MTBEs, all that other good stuff out of it. Plus has a advanced polishing system that actually adds organic memory into the system to make water a cellular water. See, the water inside your cells exists in a totally different state than water out there. It's very highly structured, okay? And the little dodecahedrons are nice and pristine and very geometrical. And that's what's inside your cell. A Frenchman was given the Nobel Prize because he made chicken heart cells immortal. And the way he did it, he kept a chicken heart specimen alive in a petri dish for 15 years before he decided to throw it out. You know, I mean, after 15 years, you get a little tired of watering the plants, you know, or watering the chicken hearts. But the way he got it to be so long-lived is that he would take special pains to create structured water to which to hydrate the chicken hearts with. Okay? He made the water that he was using to flush and keep this chicken heart material alive special. And it was like an 8-hour process, okay? And it restructured the water to make it the same shape as it was intracellularly. And he washed this thing. So he proved there that if you can hydrate the cells properly with the properly structured water, you can make cells almost immortal. Right? Now, there's a guy from Salt Lake City. He sells a company called Cellcore. He makes structured water, cellular water, and you can buy it for like $30 a gallon, you know, and use a little bit to train other water and drink it. Okay, and if you have health concerns, I would recommend immediate health concerns. I recommend that you do that because I can't deliver well units fast enough or home units fast enough to be able to provide you the thing. So in the meantime, you can buy the good water from him, and Entrain some other stuff here. So look it up. It's called Cell Core. Okay, the guy is named Dr. Lorenzen. Okay, and he's made structure in water. Right? No, I don't. I don't have a. But cellcore.com. Yeah. Yeah. No, Cell Corp. C-O-R-P. Cell Corp. Okay. You can also go to tetrahedron.com. That's Dr. Horowitz's webpage, and he's got a link to Lorenzen's webpage. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The phenomena that you said put in your chest is the same phenomenon that Hans Grandier uses in his water treatment system. He will not sell you the good water. He will package it into a container and let you run your water around it so that by resonance it entrains the other water. By resonance, that water in the cellular water was entraining your cellular water. By resonance. Yes, sir. Good question. Good question. The scientist will deny it, deny it, deny it. But you can totally nullify the effect by putting a piece of normal bromide window pane glass in front of the bottle. But if you use quartz glass, it still works. Good question. Biogenic radiation is what the Russians call it. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm still. May have achieved something that a Schauberger didn't achieve yet. It's only because blind luck and persistence. But I'm still studying all of what Schauberger does because he's still got a lot to teach me. And I recommend any of the books by Victor Schauberger, and one of his relatives sells a little CD of all his patents and all his writings, and you can get that on the web for the Center for Implosion Studies, okay, or Institute for Implosion Studies. It's on the web. Just do a web search on Victor Schauberger or Vortex water, and you'll come up with a whole bunch of different sites to start investigating. Okay. There are a couple of other real good books that you might want to look at. All right. Another one by Victor Schauberger. Okay, well, The Living Water. Okay. Very good book. Then another one by Victor Schauberger is called Living Energies, where he talks about vortex phenomena in other environments, not just the water and air. Victor Schauberger used a vortex generating air machine to create a device called the repulsine that actually flew. Okay? And it was confiscated by American intelligence when they went and confiscated all the stuff from the Hartz Mountains secret weapons plant for the Germans during World War II. Okay. The other one that gives you a lot better description of Mr. Schauberger is called The Water Wizard. Okay, there's another Callum Coates book, and it really gets into the personality of Victor Schauberger and the philosophy of it. Okay. and really gets into some nitty-gritty details and some very peculiar observations. Please bear in mind that the translation from German to English is tenuous because there are just not some words that can be translated word for word from German to English. Okay? Like one word in German may translate into a paragraph in English, okay? Especially in the scientific and philosophical sides. Okay? So read it with understanding that there's a little bit more to what he's saying than what's written on the paper. You have to read between the lines and understand what he's trying to say. Okay? The other one, if you're interested in using in agriculture and the applications of water and the vortex technology, it's called the fertile earth. Okay? One of the things that we discovered early on is that green algae loves our water. It loves it to such an extent that if you're not careful, you wind up with green jello in your swimming pool, you know, or your cooling pond. Okay, but we had to resort to adding an algae stat for our commercial applications. We control the algae. Okay, but then we thought, gee, wait a minute, you know, we could make a lot of fish food if we just skimmed it off, dried it, pulverized it, and ground it. And, hey, we could feed people with green algae. You know, it grows so fast in our water, it's amazing. It's a problem, but then again, it could be a blessing. I already mentioned the Vortex, the Key to Future Science by Ash. I strongly recommend this book, and I strongly recommend Mr. Pantone or his wife read this book and understand why the curlicues are happening in their devices, okay, and how to help nature or contribute to that effect and get a better effect on it. Okay. The next one is called a very interesting philosophical and physics book. You know, we forget that the best physicists and the actual founders of the science of physics and chemistry were philosophers. Okay. They were philosophers first, who just decided to experiment a little bit. And the new philosophy, this lady, Myrna Milani, is describing a new philosophy that the other book's called the Vortex, the Future Science. It's called a primer of rotational physics. Okay? The primer of rotational physics. She didn't want to use the word vortex because that conjures up a fixed image in most people's mind. But if you can image a vortex spinning this way, while it's spinning this way, while it's doing this, that's what she means by rotational physics. Okay? Rotating in 4D, not just 3D. Okay? That warps your mind a little bit to try to think, okay, whoa. Yeah, warps your mind, but she's talking about rotational physics and how it entrains into the ether. Okay? Myrna M. Milani. Okay? And then she's got, she has another book called The Principles of Energy, and it's book 2 in the series of rotational physics. Right. And for the mathematicians in the crowd, there's a real heavy book. Oh, here's the... called Rotational Physics, the Principle of Energy, the Rotational Physics and Philosophy series. It's the book 2 in the series by Myrna M. Milani. All right. Now, if you're really, really heavy into mathematics and you want to join into the quest of actually describing reality for the first time in history, okay, you can pick this book up called Vortex Methods, Theory and Applications. Okay. If you don't like math, don't pick up this book. This is a very taxing book. Right? Now, if you want to see what other people have done about vortex technology, and I'll have to read this for you, I guess, but there's a guy who put up a website about Joseph Hasselberg, Okay, it's called the Joseph Hasselberg page, and it's www.icaro.com, hasselbergtechnical.1.htm. I'll have these available for you to look at and write down. But he's a guy who actually inspected and gave a report of a real installation of a Victor Schauberger implosion turbine, and gives you all the data, how it worked, why it worked better, everything. And then there's a guy who's developed a free energy machine. Unfortunately, he hasn't built it yet, but the theory's out there, called Whirl Power. How you can get a liquid, spin it in 3 dimensions, and get free energy out of it. Okay? And that's www.ledo something at medspirit.com and Dome World. But the guy named David Denard is the inventor of the idea. All right. And there's a company called Vortexes. Okay. Vortexes, and they have taken the idea and made it really big. And what they make is storm water runoff control systems that are based on Vortex technology. Okay? Instead of this is the only engineering company I know of that isn't spending all their time trying to eliminate vortexes, but decided to use them. Okay? And I wish these boys had a further and clearer understanding of the vortex. They'd make better products. Okay? And well, that's all the references I have. But I do recommend, if you want to look about another third opinion about things, called The Healing Energies of Water. Good little book. It tells you all about water, and then it has a chapter in that concentrates on the advantages of vortex water. Right? Oh, I'm sorry. The author is Charlie Ryer, R-Y-R-I-E. I have all these books down in the room available, so y'all can look at them, take notes, whatever. One more book. It's called The Memory of Water. This is the story of the heretic Benveniste, right? And if you buy the second edition, they got pasted in pages showing you how he was vindicated, right? And this tells you the science and the proof you need to show anybody that homeopathy has a basis in real science, in real physics. And most people don't know it, but they're not sick, they're just thirsty. And this book here is a very interesting book, and I was amazed to read it. Okay, your body's many cries for water. I will not even begin to try to pronounce the guy's name. It's got too many consonants in it for me. Okay. I beg your pardon? Batman, yeah. Batman Jelly? Jellage. Yeah, okay. Ask him. But he's got a website called watercure.com. All right. Now, one of the deepest problems in trying to understand the vortex is that it's not one thing, it's two. Right? Ran across this book called The Power of Limits, which is the geometrical ratios and the sacred geometry of life. Okay? And it has a concept in it here called dye energy. And they show you that a leaf, if you pluck a leaf off a tree, has two different sides, and they're different shapes, and they're different sizes. There's no bilateral symmetry in life. One side of your face is a little different than the other side of the face, because there's not one formative energy, there's two formative energies. And whenever you have a flow of one, you have a flow of the other in the opposite direction. And once you start understanding this concept of dye energy, the vortex starts becoming a lot less of a mystery, right? But then you have to work simultaneous equations, and it becomes a little bit of a chore, all right? All right, if there's no more questions, oh, this author is György Docsy, G-Y-O with an umlaut, R-G-Y-D-O-C-S-Z-I. should write down the ISBN number, okay? But if there is no other questions, I think we'll give it up and let's go get some lunch or something. Thank you.